Yep. Right. All right. So today we're starting to talk about the heart. Chapter 9 is about the heart. 10 talks about the circulatory system, and then 11 we start to move into the blood or reversal, blood vessels. So when we talk about the cardiovascular system, we're talking about 3 components. The first component is the heart. The heart is in charge of pumping the blood to all of the cells in our bodies, and then the blood vessels that help us move the blood from point A to point B. So the roles of each, our heart is the pump, our blood is the transportation, and then our blood vessels are the connection between point A and point B. So between all of these, we're able to pump blood that contains nutrients, oxygen, waste products from the heart to our other cells, from the cells back to our heart. Okay. The blood is the way that we carry that, all of those things. We carry our red blood cells, we carry protein, we carry hormones, we carry gases within the blood. And then the blood vessels come into contact with pretty much every cell in our entire body. So wherever there's a cell, there's usually a blood vessel close by. Okay? Now, when we talk about our heart is described as a dual pump. Dual means 2. Okay? So we have 4 chambers, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, depending on how you want to look at it. And these 4 chambers have various size and content of muscle depending on what their job is. Okay? And we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So there's 2 ways to look at this as a dual pump. The first is to split it top and bottom. If we talk about the top of the heart, or the 2 chambers at the top of the heart, what do we call those? Atrium. Okay, so we have our atrium at the top. And we have our left and our right atrium. Okay. And then what are the bigger containers at the bottom? Ventricles. Okay. And if we talk about this as a dual chamber, the top of our heart is going to have one job, and the bottom of our heart is going to have another job. Okay, so our atrium, and you can see blood, and our ventricles deliver blood. Okay, dual purpose. Atria collect it, ventricles push it out. One does one, the other does the other. Okay. The other way we could split this into a dual pump is left and right. Okay. Now, when we're looking at our heart, we're looking at this from an anatomical position. So you're picturing this being the heart inside your body. So this is my left side of my heart. This is the right side of my heart. Does that make sense? So here's going to be my left and my right. Okay. Now, where does the right side of our heart receive blood from? Where is the blood coming from? Yeah, so this is receiving blood from our entire systemic system. So our head, our neck, our feet, our legs, our abdominals, everywhere within our body is going to enter into this right side. Okay? And if it just comes back from our entire systemic system, what are things that all of our cells need? Oxygen. Okay, so this if it's just coming back from all of the system, it's probably low in oxygen because it gave the cells the oxygen. That makes sense? Came back from there. What else do all of our cells need? Nutrients. So it's probably low in nutrients. Okay? And so it's receiving in that right atrium, it's receiving things low in oxygen and nutrients, and it's receiving things high in carbon dioxide and waste. Okay? And this is going to travel into our right ventricle. And then where do we go from our right ventricle that's going to allow us to drop off some of that carbon dioxide and pick up more oxygen? The lungs. Okay? So our right ventricle delivers low oxygen, high CO2 to the lung. All right. So from there, that blood's going to get pumped up. It's going to go to our lungs because it's going to pick up more oxygen and drop off carbon dioxide. And then from the lungs, it's going to come back to our left ventricle, or our left atrium. And now it's going to be the opposite. I and O2, low and that's what happens in the lungs, right? We pick up oxygen, we drop off carbon dioxide. So we received it from the lungs, which means it's going to go into our ventricle, and then where's our ventricle going to pump this out to? Yeah, the rest of the body. So it's just gonna bypass. No left. Right? And it just makes a continuous circle. Go to the body, come back to the heart. Go to the lungs, go back to the heart. Go to the body, come back to the heart. Come back to the heart, go to the lungs. Come back to the heart, go to the systemic system. Okay? So we can talk about this dual pump as receiving, first delivering, two different jobs. Or we can talk about it in terms of where the blood is going after it comes to the heart. So when we talk about the right side, we're talking about blood coming from the body, going to the lungs. Blood coming from the lungs, going to the body. So these are dual pumps as well because they're going to different spots. Does that make sense? Okay. And then we also have valves that allow the blood to move from one container to the other container, right? There's a time when these valves are open and there's a time when these valves are shut. When we're talking about separating top to bottom, we have our tricuspid. Here, and our bicuspid. Great. Okay. And then we also have our pulmonary valve. In our ventricle, and this is going to connect the ventricle to the pulmonary circuit, so it's the pulmonary valve going from the heart to the pulmonary lungs. And then we have our aortic valve. that separates our heart from our aortic arch, or our aorta vessel. Okay? So we have 4 chambers, 4 valves. You're responsible for knowing left and right atrium, left and right ventricle, and then the 4 valves. Okay, so make sure that those make sense to you. All right. So once we have the heart is going to pump the blood, and then where does the blood go from there? So when we talk about how our blood vessels are arranged, we talk about this in terms of being arranged in parallel versus being arranged in series. Any physics kids, the difference between parallel and series? What does it mean to be arranged in parallel? Yeah.
So when it's arranged in parallel, it's like one next to the other, whereas series is like connecting.
Yeah, so right now this is arranged in parallel. These 2 tables are arranged in parallel. They run next to each other. You guys are arranged in parallel. If we turned you guys, the 4 of you would be arranged in parallel. And then if we turned you guys a little bit, this whole line would be arranged in series. Okay? Now, our blood vessels are arranged in parallel. They're not arranged in series. So as you see, as the blood comes from the left side of the heart, it has a long line, and then it has a lot of offshoots, where it goes directly to the skeletal muscle, the kidneys, the digestive, the brain, cells, and other organs. So we have a loop that goes like this. And then we have another loop that goes like this. And we have another loop that goes like this. See how those are arranged in their own little circuits, their own little circles of connection to the heart? What would be the benefit of having something arranged in parallel and not in series, where we have the left side of the heart, and then it goes skeletal, brain, digestive, kidney, and then back to the right side of the heart. This would be arranged in series. You see how it goes one, and then the next, and the next, and the next, and the next. What would be the downside of that? Yeah. You could run out of oxygen. If we're running a race, maybe our skeletal muscles are taking a lot of the oxygen out of the blood. And by the time it got to our kidneys, what would happen to the concentration of oxygen in the blood? It would be low or high? Really low, right? Because by then, the skeletal muscle has taken all the oxygen it needs, the brain has taken all the oxygen it needs, our digestive system has taken all the oxygen it needs. And by the time it got down to the kidneys, that blood level of oxygen might be so low that the kidneys can't actually get any of the oxygen into its tissue. That makes sense? Okay. So this ensures all cells get what it needs. Because this concentration of blood is going here, each muscle is taking what it needs and then sending the rest of it back. More blood is carrying on here that didn't go to the skeletal muscles. The kidneys take what it needs, pass the rest on. More blood has gone through that didn't go skeletal muscles, kidneys, that only is going to the digestive system, and then it's taking what it needs. Same thing happens at the brain. right? Not all of our blood is going to every single organ system every rotation. Each organ system gets an amount of blood that has the oxygen concentration it needs. Okay? Why else is this advantageous? Anybody ever? Yeah,
They could happen at the same time.
it can happen at the same time. So like all of our blood is getting to all the systems at the same time. We're never gonna have one system not have blood in it. So it's always gonna have a ready supply of the blood that it needs and be able to dump what it doesn't need. Okay? We have that constant blood flow. Anybody ever, yeah,
Is it prevent multiple reporting?
yeah, so let's say that our digestive system has an ulcer. You guys know what an ulcer is? An ulcer is like a hole in the tissue, and if the ulcer gets bad enough, it could actually have internal bleeding. Is it often that we die from an ulcer? What if it went in series and now we could no longer get from the digestive system to the kidneys? And if we can't get to the kidneys, we can't get back to the heart, right? If all of a sudden we drop this connection, all the blood's gonna pool in our digestive system, it would all cause us to bleed internally. And now the right side of our heart is never gonna receive blood back. Or, anybody ever have like a really bad cut that required stitches? Okay, what happens if we get this really bad cut in our skeletal muscles and now our brain doesn't get oxygen? We're gonna bleed out a lot faster, right? Because all the blood is going to one place and a lot of that blood is gonna leave through that hole because the pressure is gonna be bigger. And now our brain, digestive, and kidney aren't gonna get any blood or way less of the blood. Okay, so it prevents an injury from damaging other systems. Okay. And then the last thing that we need to remember is that our entire body functions on gradients, right? And we said that things move faster when the gradient is larger. You remember that? Yeah. We have diffusion. The bigger the gradient, the faster the movement's going to happen. Okay. So this maintains gradient. So let's say that the blood coming from the left side of the heart has 100% nutrients. And inside the cells of every cell, let's say it has 20% nutrients. Which way is the diffusion of nutrients going to go in the skeletal muscle? Into the cell, right? We're going to get blood and it will go in. Okay? Well, how much of the nutrients did the skeletal muscles take at that point? Give me an arbitrary number. Okay? So then when it gets to the brain, we only have 40% nutrients in the blood. compared to 20% inside. So what did we just do to this gradient? Did we make it bigger or smaller? Smaller. So now we're going to get some diffusion of nutrients going in, but are we going to get as many nutrients going in? The most we're going to get is 30. So now let's say we're here, and now we only have 30% nutrients. And 20% inside. We're going to get diffusion, but are we going to get very much diffusion? We get even less diffusion. And now we're here, we have 25% diffusion or nutrients. And 20 here. So do you see how each organ system is going to get less and less nutrients because we changed that gradient? Okay. Now let's pretend that this is oxygen. That same thing would happen with oxygen. And by the time we got to the other organs and cells, we won't be able to get any oxygen into those tissues. And if we don't have oxygen, you guys remember what happened with bicep curls when we did cut off the oxygen last week? Were we very successful? John, were you very successful? No, our body wants the oxygen, okay? So we have to maintain these gradients. And by having our systems in parallel, we can maintain those gradients. Because the concentration of the blood is the same in each cycle. Okay? Now, different organs might get more blood. Maybe when we're sitting in class, our skeletal muscles are getting 10%, and our kidneys are getting 30%, and our digestive system is getting 30%. What are we at? 70, and our brain is getting 20%. And our other organs are getting 10% blood. Okay? And now when we go work out, okay, we go to sports practice, maybe now our skeletal muscles get 40, our kidneys get 10, our digestive system gets 10, 60, 80, and now we're at 20 here. So we can change the blood flow to each system. But we know that the nutrients that each system is getting is going to be the same regardless of what system they are. Okay? So we can change blood flow, but we know that every organ is getting good blood flow and good nutrients and good access to oxygen. Okay? Any questions on that? Good? Okay. So the rest of the class we're going to talk about is how do we get this blood to move from our heart into our systemic system or into our pulmonary system.